Marcus Thompson walked through the front doors of Lincoln Middle School on a cold Monday morning in September 1998. His backpack felt heavy on his shoulders, but not as heavy as the nervous feeling in his stomach. This was his third day at the new school, and he still did not know anyone. The hallways were full of kids laughing and talking with their friends. Marcus kept his head down and walked to his locker. He was 12 years old and had just moved to this suburban neighborhood with his mother. Their old apartment in the city had been too small and too expensive. His mother, Dorothy Thompson, worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. She was a nurse during the day and cleaned offices at night. She wanted a better life for Marcus, so she saved every penny she could until they could afford to move to a place with better schools. Marcus missed his old friends. He missed his old neighborhood where everyone looked like him. Here at Lincoln Middle School, he was one of only 7 black students in the entire school. The other kids were not mean to him, but they were not exactly friendly either. They looked at him like he was different, like he did not belong. Marcus tried not to let it bother him, but sometimes it was hard. The bell rang and Marcus hurried to his 3rd period class. Music class. He loved music more than anything in the world. His father, Leonard Thompson, was a jazz pianist who traveled around the country playing in different clubs and concert halls. Marcus did not see his father very often because he was always on the road. But when they were together, they spent hours at the piano. Marcus had been playing since he was 4 years old. His father taught him everything he knew. Marcus walked into the music room and looked around. It was a large room with chairs arranged in rows. At the front of the room stood a beautiful black grand piano. Marcus's heart beat faster when he saw it. He loved pianos. He loved the way they looked, the way they sounded, the way the keys felt under his fingers. He wanted to walk up to it and play, but he knew he could not. Not yet. The music teacher, Mrs. Patricia Henshaw, stood at the front of the room. She was a tall woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a long dark skirt and a white blouse with a pearl necklace. Her face was stern and serious. She looked like someone who did not smile very often. Marcus took a seat in the back row, trying to be invisible. Other students filed into the room, chatting and laughing. 2 girls sat in front of him, talking about a party that happened over the weekend. A group of boys sat on the other side of the room, throwing paper balls at each other when Mrs. Henshaw was not looking. Mrs. Henshaw cleared her throat loudly. The room fell silent. She walked to the center of the room and looked at each student with her cold blue eyes. "Good morning, class," she said in a voice that was not warm or welcoming. "Today we are going to continue our study of classical music. I expect everyone to pay attention and take notes. Classical music is the foundation of all real music. It requires discipline, intelligence, and proper training." She walked over to a record player and put on a vinyl record. The sound of an orchestra filled the room. Marcus recognized it immediately. It was Beethoven's 5th Symphony. He had heard his father play parts of it on the piano many times. Mrs. Henshaw closed her eyes as the music played, moving her hand in the air like she was conducting. Some students looked interested. Others looked bored. Marcus listened carefully, picking out the different instruments in his mind. When the music ended, Mrs. Henshaw turned off the record player and faced the class again. "Classical music is a gift from Europe," she said. "It was created by the great composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Bach. These were men of genius and refinement. This is the music that educated people appreciate." She walked slowly between the rows of desks, her heels clicking on the floor. "Of course, not everyone can understand classical music," she continued. "It takes a certain level of culture and background to truly appreciate it. Some people prefer simpler forms of music because that is all they can understand." Marcus felt his face grow hot. He knew what she meant. He had heard this kind of talk before. When some people said certain backgrounds or some people, they were really talking about black people. They were saying that black people were not smart enough or cultured enough to understand classical music. But that was not true. Marcus knew it was not true. His father played classical music all the time. He could play Mozart and Chopin as beautifully as anyone, and Marcus could too. He had been playing classical pieces since he was 6 years old. Mrs. Henshaw stopped at the front of the room and looked at the class again. "Now, who can tell me what makes classical music different from other types of music?" she asked. A blonde girl in the front row raised her hand. "It has more complex melodies and harmonies," she said. "Excellent, Jennifer," Mrs. Henshaw said with a rare smile. Classical music is indeed more sophisticated and complex than popular music or folk music. Marcus wanted to raise his hand. He wanted to say that jazz music was also complex and sophisticated. He wanted to tell her that his father could improvise melodies that were just as beautiful and intricate as anything Mozart ever wrote. But he kept quiet. He did not want to draw attention to himself. Mrs. Henshaw walked over to the piano and ran her hand across the polished wood. "This piano is a Steinway," she said. "It is one of the finest instruments in the school district. It cost over $30,000. Only serious students with proper training should play it." She looked around the room as if daring anyone to disagree with her. Playing the piano requires years of lessons with qualified teachers. It requires dedication and a musical heritage. Not everyone has the background or the natural ability to play an instrument like this. Marcus felt his hands tighten into fists under his desk. He knew what she was saying. She was saying that kids like him, kids from the city, kids who were black, did not have what it took to play classical piano. She was wrong. So wrong. But he did not know how to prove it without causing trouble. The class continued with Mrs. Henshaw lecturing about different composers. She talked about their lives, where they were from, what made them great. Every composer she mentioned was white and European. She did not mention Scott Joplin or Duke Ellington or any of the great black musicians that Marcus's father had told him about. Marcus looked at the clock. Only 15 minutes left in class. He could make it through 15 more minutes. Then Mrs. Henshaw said something that made his stomach drop. "I notice we have some new faces in class this year," she said, looking directly at Marcus. "Why don't you stand up and introduce yourself, young man in the back?" Marcus's heart started pounding. All the students turned around to look at him. He slowly stood up, his legs feeling shaky. "What is your name?" Mrs. Henshaw asked. "Marcus Thompson," he said quietly. "Speak up. We cannot hear you." "Marcus Thompson," he said louder. "And where did you transfer from, Marcus Thompson?" "Riverside Middle School." "In the city?" Mrs. Henshaw nodded slowly, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "The city, I see. And tell me, Marcus, did your previous school have a music program?" "Yes, ma'am." "Did you take music class?" "Yes, ma'am." "And what did you learn about music at your previous school?" Marcus hesitated. He did not like the way she was asking these questions. He did not like the tone in her voice. "We learned about different types of music," he said. "Jazz, blues, rock and roll, classical." "I see. A little bit of everything then. Not much depth in any particular area." Some students giggled. Marcus felt his face burn with embarrassment and anger. Mrs. Henshaw walked closer to him, her arms crossed over her chest. "Tell me, Marcus, do you play any instruments?" Marcus did not want to answer. He knew this was a trap, but he could not lie. "Yes, ma'am, I play the piano." Her eyebrows went up in exaggerated surprise. More students turned to look at him. "The piano. How interesting. And where did you learn to play?" "My father taught me." "Your father? And what does your father do?" "He's a musician." A pianist. How wonderful." Her voice was dripping with sarcasm that made Marcus's hands shake. "And what kind of music does your father play?" "Jazz and classical, too." "Jazz and classical. My, that must be quite something." The class laughed. Not all of them, but enough that Marcus wanted to disappear. Mrs. Henshaw walked back to the front of the room, then turned to face Marcus again. "You know, Marcus, I have been teaching music for 27 years. I have trained students who have gone on to play in symphonies and attend prestigious music schools. I have very high standards in my classroom." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I find it interesting when students claim they can play the piano. Many people think they can play, but they cannot really play. They know a few simple songs, maybe something they learned from a family member or from watching television. But that is not the same as truly playing the piano. That is not the same as understanding music." Marcus knew what she was doing. She was insulting him. She was insulting his father. She was saying they were not real musicians. "So here is what we are going to do," Mrs. Henshaw continued. "Since you claim you can play the piano, I would like you to demonstrate your skills for the class. Come up here and play something for us." The room went completely silent. Every eye was on Marcus. He felt frozen in place. "Come on," Mrs. Henshaw said, gesturing toward the piano. "Do not be shy. If you really can play, this is your chance to show us." Marcus's mind was racing. He knew this was not a genuine invitation. She wanted him to fail. She wanted him to sit at that expensive piano and embarrass himself in front of everyone. She wanted to prove that he was just a kid from the city who did not know anything about real music. But Marcus did know about real music. He had been playing the piano for 8 years. He had spent countless hours practicing, learning, perfecting his technique. His father had taught him well. He knew classical pieces, jazz standards, blues progressions. He could read music as easily as he could read a book. His legs started moving before his brain could stop them. He walked slowly to the front of the room, his backpack still on his shoulders. The other students watched in silence. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked excited, like they were about to watch something entertaining. Mrs. Henshaw stood next to the piano with her arms crossed, a small smile on her lips. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who thought they had already won. "Take off your backpack and sit down," she said. "Play anything you like. Show us what your father taught you." Marcus slipped off his backpack and set it on the floor. He sat down on the piano bench. It was the right height. The piano was beautiful up close, even more beautiful than he had thought. The keys were perfectly white and black, clean and pristine. He put his hands on the keys. They were cool and smooth under his fingers. For a moment, all the fear and anger melted away. When he touched a piano, everything else disappeared. It was just him and the music. He could hear his father's voice in his head. "When you play, do not think about the people watching. Do not think about anything except the music. Let the music speak for itself." Marcus took a deep breath. His hands were steady now. He knew exactly what he was going to play. Mrs. Henshaw stood behind him, waiting for him to fumble, waiting for him to prove her right. The class waited in silence, and Marcus began to play. The first notes that came from the piano were soft and gentle. Marcus started with the opening of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the most beautiful pieces ever written. His fingers moved across the keys with confidence and grace. The melody flowed from the piano like water from a stream, smooth and natural. Mrs. Henshaw's smile faded within seconds. Her eyes widened slightly as she listened to the sounds coming from her precious Steinway piano. This was not what she expected. Not at all. The other students sat up straighter in their seats. The ones who had been looking at their phones or doodling in notebooks stopped and paid attention. The music was too beautiful to ignore. Marcus played with feeling and emotion that most 12-year-olds could not express. Each note was clear and perfect. His timing was flawless. Marcus's eyes were closed as he played. He was not in the classroom anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere peaceful and safe. He remembered sitting next to his father at their old upright piano in their apartment. He remembered his father's strong hands showing him how to press the keys, how to make the notes sing instead of just sound. Music is not about hitting the right notes, his father had told him. Anyone can hit the right notes if they practice enough. Real music is about feeling. It is about telling a story without words. When you play, you have to put your heart into it. Marcus was putting his heart into it now. The Chopin piece was sad and sweet at the same time. It spoke of longing and beauty, of darkness and light. Marcus's fingers danced across the keys, moving from the low notes to the high notes and back again. The melody repeated and changed, grew softer then louder like waves on an ocean. In the back row, a girl named Sarah felt tears come to her eyes. She did not know why. She had never cried over music before. But there was something in the way Marcus played that touched something deep inside her. It was like he was speaking directly to her soul. A boy named Tyler, who usually made jokes during class and never paid attention, sat completely still. His mouth was slightly open as he listened. He had never heard anyone their age play like this. He had never heard anyone at all play like this, except on recordings. Mrs. Henshaw stood frozen behind Marcus. Her face had gone pale. Her arms were no longer crossed. They hung at her sides, limp and useless. She had wanted Marcus to fail. She had wanted him to fumble through some simple tune. Maybe Mary Had a Little Lamb or Chopsticks. She had wanted to use his failure to prove her point, to show that not everyone belonged at her piano, in her classroom, in her school. But he was not failing. He was succeeding in a way that made her whole body feel cold. This child, this black child from the city that she had looked down on, was playing one of the most difficult pieces in the classical piano repertoire, and he was playing it beautifully. Better than beautiful. He was playing it like a professional. Marcus reached the most emotional part of the nocturne. where the melody climbs higher and higher before falling back down like a sigh. His left hand played the bass notes in a steady rhythm, while his right hand wove the melody above it. The two hands worked together in perfect harmony, creating layers of sound that filled every corner of the room. Some of the students had goosebumps on their arms. Others felt a strange tightness in their chests. The music was doing something to them, changing something inside them. They had all been in music class before. They had all heard classical music. But this was different. This was alive. As the Chopin piece came to its gentle conclusion, Marcus did not stop playing. Without any pause, he transitioned into something completely different. His whole body shifted on the bench. His shoulders relaxed. His head began to move slightly to a rhythm that the class did not know yet. Then the jazz started. Marcus's father had taught him that jazz was freedom. Jazz was taking the rules of music and bending them, stretching them, playing with them. Jazz was conversation. Jazz was laughter and tears and everything in between. Marcus began to improvise, creating music in the moment. His right hand played a melody that swung and bounced, full of life and energy. His left hand played chords that were rich and complex, with notes that seemed to clash but somehow fit together perfectly. This was bebop, the kind of jazz his father loved. It was fast and tricky and exciting. The mood in the room changed completely. Where the Chopin had been serious and emotional, the jazz was joyful and playful. Marcus's fingers flew across the keys so fast they were almost a blur. He played runs that went up and down the piano, hitting notes that most people would never think to put together. But in Marcus's hands, those notes made perfect sense. He quoted famous jazz melodies in his improvisation. A bit of Take 5 appeared, then a piece of Round Midnight, then something from Charlie Parker. He was showing off now, but not in a mean way. He was showing off the way musicians do when they are talking to each other through their instruments, saying, "Look what I can do and listen to this." A few students started tapping their feet without realizing it. The jazz rhythm was infectious. It made people want to move, want to dance, want to snap their fingers and bob their heads. Even the serious classical music students who usually looked down on jazz could not help but respond to the energy Marcus was creating. Mrs. Henshaw took a step backward. Then another step. Her back hit the wall behind her. She pressed herself against it like she was trying to disappear into it. Her face showed confusion, shock, and something else. Fear, maybe. Or shame. She had made a terrible mistake. She had tried to humiliate this child in front of his peers. She had assumed that because he was black, because he came from the city, because he was not like the other students in her class, he could not possibly be talented. She had judged him based on the color of his skin and where he came from, not on who he really was or what he could do. And now that child was proving her wrong in the most public way possible. He was not just playing the piano. He was mastering it. He was making that expensive Steinway sing in ways that Mrs. Henshaw, for all her 27 years of teaching, had never heard before in her classroom. Marcus built his improvisation to a climax, his hands moving faster and faster, the notes tumbling out in cascades of sound. Then suddenly he brought it all back down. He slowed the tempo. He simplified the melody. He brought the music back to something soft and sweet, like a lullaby. He ended with a simple chord progression that seemed to say, "And that is all I have to tell you." The last note hung in the air for a moment, vibrating and fading slowly. Then there was silence. Marcus opened his eyes. He had forgotten where he was. For those few minutes he had been lost in the music, in that place where nothing else existed. Now reality came crashing back. He was in a classroom. He was at a new school where nobody knew him. He had just played in front of everyone. His heart started racing again, but for a different reason now. What would they think? What would they say? Would they make fun of him? Would they think he was showing off? Then the applause started. It began with Tyler, the class clown in the back row. He started clapping hard and loud, his hands coming together with sharp smacks that echoed in the room. Then Sarah joined in, her eyes still wet with tears. Then Jennifer in the front row, the girl who usually answered all the questions. Then everyone else, the entire class, was clapping. Some students were smiling. Some were shaking their heads in disbelief. Some were saying, "Wow," and "Oh my God," and "That was incredible." Marcus turned around on the piano bench and looked at them. He did not know what to do. He had never performed in front of a class before. He had played at home for his father and his mother. He had played at a few small recitals when he was younger, but he had never had a whole room of people his own age clapping for him like this. A boy named David stood up. Then others started standing too. Within seconds, most of the class was on their feet, giving Marcus a standing ovation. They clapped, and some of them whistled and cheered. Marcus felt his face getting hot, but this time it was not from embarrassment or anger. It was from something else. Pride, maybe, or relief, or joy. He did not know exactly what he was feeling. It was too big and too complicated to name. Through all the applause, Marcus looked at Mrs. Henshaw. She was still standing against the back wall. She was not clapping. Her arms hung at her sides. Her face was white as paper. Her mouth was slightly open, but no words came out. She looked like someone who had just seen a ghost. Their eyes met for a brief moment. Marcus saw something in her expression that he did not fully understand. It was not just surprise or shock. It was something deeper, something that looked almost like pain. Mrs. Henshaw finally moved. She pushed herself away from the wall and walked toward the front of the room. Her legs seemed unsteady, like she might fall over. The students noticed her movement, and the applause began to die down. They sat back in their seats, still excited and energized by what they had just witnessed. Mrs. Henshaw reached her desk and put one hand on it, as if she needed it to hold herself up. She looked at Marcus, who was still sitting at the piano bench. Then she looked at the clock on the wall. "Class dismissed," she said. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. The students looked confused. There were still 10 minutes left in the period. They never got dismissed early. "I said class dismissed," Mrs. Henshaw repeated louder this time. "Everyone leave, now." The students grabbed their books and bags, still talking excitedly about Marcus's performance. They rushed out of the room, eager to spread the news to everyone else in the school. "Did you hear him play?" one girl said to her friend as they walked out. "That was insane," a boy said. "He was like a professional or something." "I recorded part of it on my phone," another student whispered. "I am going to watch it again." Marcus stood up from the piano bench and grabbed his backpack. He did not want to be alone in the room with Mrs. Henshaw. He started walking toward the door with the other students. "Marcus Thompson." Mrs. Henshaw's voice stopped him. He turned around slowly. She was still standing at her desk, one hand gripping the edge of it. Her face was no longer white. Now it was red, flushed with color. Her eyes were shiny, like she might cry, but Marcus did not think someone like Mrs. Henshaw ever cried. "You may go," she said quietly. Marcus nodded and turned back toward the door. But before he left, he heard her say something else, so soft he almost missed it. "I did not know." Marcus did not respond. He walked out of the classroom and into the hallway. The other students had already scattered to their next classes or to their lockers. The hallway was busy and loud, full of the normal chaos of a school day, but Marcus felt like he was walking through a dream. Everything seemed a little bit unreal. His hands were still tingling from playing the piano. His heart was still beating fast. He could still hear the music in his head, still feel the keys under his fingers. What had just happened? He had gone into that classroom expecting to sit quietly in the back and not be noticed. Now everyone in the school would know who he was. Everyone would be talking about him. Was that good or bad? He was not sure yet. Marcus walked to his locker and opened it. Inside was a photo of his father that he had taped to the door. His father was sitting at a piano in some jazz club, his head tilted back, his eyes closed, his fingers on the keys. He looked happy and free. Marcus touched the photo gently. "Thanks, Dad," he whispered. Behind him, he could hear students talking. "Who is that new kid?" "Marcus something. He is in my English class. Did you hear what happened in music? He played the piano and everyone freaked out." "No way. For real?" "Yes. Amy was there. She said he is like a genius or something." Marcus closed his locker and leaned his forehead against it. His life at Lincoln Middle School had just changed completely. He just did not know yet if it had changed for better or worse. In the music room, Mrs. Henshaw sat down at her desk. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the piano, that beautiful Steinway that she had always been so protective of. She had said that only serious students with proper training should play it. She had meant that only certain kinds of students should play it. Students who looked a certain way. Students who came from certain backgrounds. And then Marcus Thompson had sat at that piano and played music that was more beautiful, more skilled, more passionate than anything she had heard in years of teaching. She had been wrong. So terribly, horribly wrong. Mrs. Henshaw put her head in her hands. For the first time in many years, she felt truly ashamed of herself. By lunchtime, everyone in Lincoln Middle School knew about Marcus Thompson. The story spread like wildfire through the hallways, the cafeteria, the playground. Students who had not even been in the music class had heard about what happened. The details got bigger and more dramatic with each retelling. "He played this really hard classical piece," one student told another at lunch. Even Mrs. Henshaw looked shocked. "I heard he played for like 20 minutes straight without stopping," someone else added. "My friend Sarah said she actually cried. She said it was the most beautiful thing she ever heard." He made Mrs. Henshaw speechless. She sent everyone out of class early. Marcus sat alone at a lunch table in the corner of the cafeteria. He had bought a sandwich and a carton of milk, but he was not eating. His stomach was twisted in knots. He could feel people looking at him, pointing at him, whispering about him. Some students smiled at him as they walked past. Others just stared. He was not used to this kind of attention. At his old school, he had been just another kid. Nobody special. Nobody different. Here, he was the new kid who could play piano like a professional. He was the kid who had embarrassed the mean music teacher. He was suddenly famous, and he did not know if he liked it. A shadow fell across his table. Marcus looked up to see 3 students standing there. 2 boys and a girl. They were all white, all dressed in nice clothes, all looking at him with curious expressions. "Hey," one of the boys said. He had blonde hair and wore a polo shirt. "You are Marcus, right? The piano guy?" Marcus nodded slowly. "That was crazy what you did in music class," the boy continued. "I am Tyler. This is Brad and Jessica. We were all there. We saw the whole thing." "Oh," Marcus said. He did not know what else to say. "Can we sit with you?" Jessica asked. She had red hair and freckles. Marcus shrugged. "Sure." The 3 students sat down at his table. Marcus felt uncomfortable. He was not good at making new friends. He never knew what to say or how to act. "So where did you learn to play like that?" Tyler asked. "Do you take lessons from some famous teacher or something?" "My father taught me," Marcus said quietly. "Your dad? Seriously? What is he, like a concert pianist?" "He plays jazz mostly, in clubs and things, but he knows classical music too." "That is so cool," Jessica said. "My mom makes me take piano lessons from this old lady down the street. I hate it. I can barely play Für Elise without messing up, but you play like someone on TV." Marcus felt his face get warm. "I have been playing for a long time, since I was little." "How did you stay so calm?" Brad asked. He had been quiet until now. "I mean, Mrs. Henshaw was totally trying to make you look bad. She is always doing stuff like that to people. She picks on kids she thinks are not good enough for her class." "I just tried not to think about it," Marcus said. "When I play, I try to only think about the music." "Well, you showed her," Tyler said with a grin. "Did you see her face? She looked like she was going to pass out or something. It was awesome." The other students at the table laughed. Marcus managed a small smile, but inside he felt strange. Yes, he had proven Mrs. Henshaw wrong. Yes, she had been trying to embarrass him and it had backfired, but he did not feel happy about it. He felt tired and confused and worried about what would happen next. More students came over to the table. They wanted to meet Marcus, to talk to him about the piano, to hear the story again. Soon there were 8 or 9 kids crowded around, all talking at once. Marcus answered their questions as best he could, but he felt overwhelmed. This was too much attention, too fast. Across the cafeteria, in the teacher's break room, Mrs. Henshaw sat alone at a small table. Her lunch sat in front of her untouched. A turkey sandwich, an apple, a bottle of water. She could not eat. Her stomach felt sick. The other teachers in the break room were talking quietly in groups. Mrs. Henshaw could not hear exactly what they were saying, but she knew they were talking about her. Word traveled fast among teachers, just like it did among students. By now, everyone on the staff knew what had happened in her music class that morning. Mr. Rodriguez, the school principal, walked into the break room. He was a short man with dark hair and kind eyes. He had been principal at Lincoln Middle School for 5 years. Most of the teachers liked him because he was fair and understanding. He looked around the room and his eyes landed on Mrs. Henshaw. He walked over to her table. "Patricia," he said, "can I speak with you in my office after lunch?" Mrs. Henshaw looked up at him. Her face was pale again. "Of course," she said. "Good, let us say 1 o'clock. He walked away. Mrs. Henshaw stared down at her sandwich. Her hands were shaking again. She knew what this meeting would be about. Someone must have told the principal what happened. Maybe several students had told him. Maybe even other teachers had heard the story and reported it. She had made a mistake, a big mistake, and now she was going to have to answer for it. At 1 o'clock, Mrs. Henshaw sat in a chair across from Mr. Rodriguez's desk. His office was small but comfortable, with bookshelves on one wall and a window that looked out at the playground. He sat behind his desk with his hands folded in front of him. "I have heard some interesting things about your music class this morning," he said. His voice was calm but serious. Mrs. Henshaw said nothing. She kept her eyes on her hands in her lap. "I have had 4 different students come to my office to tell me what happened. They all told me the same story. Would you like to tell me your version?" Mrs. Henshaw took a deep breath. There was a new student in class, Marcus Thompson. He transferred from Riverside Middle School. During the lesson, I asked him about his background in music. He said he could play the piano. I invited him to demonstrate his skills for the class. "That is not quite how the students described it," Mr. Rodriguez said. "They said you called him out in front of everyone. They said you made comments about his background and where he came from. They said it seemed like you were trying to embarrass him." "I was simply assessing his skill level," Mrs. Henshaw said, but her voice was weak. Even she did not believe what she was saying. "Patricia, I am going to be direct with you. This is not the first time concerns have been raised about how you treat certain students." Mrs. Henshaw looked up, surprised. "Last year I received a complaint from the family of a student named Juan Martinez. They felt you treated their son differently than the other students in your class. The year before that, there was an issue with a student named Keisha Williams. Her mother said you made assumptions about what kind of music her daughter would be interested in based on her race." "I treat all my students equally," Mrs. Henshaw protested. "Do you?" Mr. Rodriguez leaned forward. "Because what I am hearing suggests otherwise. Multiple students have told me that you made Marcus Thompson play the piano specifically because you did not believe he could actually play. You were trying to prove a point. You were trying to show that he did not belong in your classroom or at this school." Mrs. Henshaw felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry. Not here, not now. "And then he played," Mr. Rodriguez continued. "By all accounts, he played beautifully, better than you expected, better than most students you have taught in your entire career. So the question I need you to answer honestly is this. Why did you assume he could not play? What made you think this child was lying or exaggerating about his abilities?" The room was silent. Mrs. Henshaw knew the answer to that question. She had known it the moment Marcus finished playing. But saying it out loud was different. Saying it out loud made it real. "I made an assumption," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Based on where he came from, based on his appearance, it was wrong." "Yes, it was wrong," Mr. Rodriguez agreed. "And it was hurtful. Do you know that Marcus went home sick after your class? His mother called the school office to let us know. She said he was upset and did not want to come back tomorrow." Mrs. Henshaw closed her eyes. She felt a pain in her chest, sharp and deep. "That boy has a gift," Mr. Rodriguez said. "A real gift. He should be excited about sharing his talent with other students. He should be welcomed and encouraged. Instead, you made him feel like he had to prove himself worthy of even sitting at the piano. You made him feel like he did not belong." "I did not mean to," Mrs. Henshaw said. "Intent does not matter as much as impact. You hurt that child. And this is a pattern with you, Patricia. I cannot ignore it anymore." Mrs. Henshaw finally looked up at him. "What happens now?" "Several things need to happen. First, you will apologize to Marcus Thompson and his mother, a real apology, where you take full responsibility for your actions. Second, you will complete a diversity and sensitivity training program. This is not optional. Third, I will be observing your classes more frequently to ensure all students are being treated fairly and with respect. And if I refuse, then we will have a different conversation about your future at this school." Mrs. Henshaw nodded slowly. She felt humiliated, but somewhere deep down, she knew she deserved this. She had treated Marcus unfairly. She had let her prejudices guide her actions. She had hurt a child who had done nothing wrong except be talented and different from what she expected. "I will do whatever you ask," she said quietly. Good. I am scheduling a meeting with Marcus and his mother for tomorrow after school. You will be there. You will apologize sincerely, and then you will start working on being a better teacher to all your students." Mrs. Henshaw stood up to leave. At the door, she turned back to Mr. Rodriguez. "He really is talented," she said. "That boy. Marcus, he is extraordinarily talented." "I know," Mr. Rodriguez replied. "Everyone knows now. Thanks to you, but not in the way you intended." That evening, Marcus sat in the living room of his apartment with his mother. Dorothy Thompson had gotten home from her day job at the hospital at 6 o'clock. She was tired, as she always was, but she sat next to her son on the couch and listened as he told her everything that had happened. She had already gotten a call from the school about Marcus coming home sick. The school secretary had told her there had been an incident in music class, but Marcus had refused to talk about it earlier. Now finally he was ready to explain. "She wanted me to fail, Mom," he said. "She wanted me to sit at that piano and not be able to play. She wanted to prove I was not good enough." Dorothy put her arm around her son's shoulders. "But you did not fail. You played beautifully, did you not?" "Yes, but it does not feel good. Everyone is talking about me now. Everyone wants to be my friend suddenly, but they do not really know me. They just know I can play piano." "That is how it starts sometimes," Dorothy said gently. "People learn one thing about you and then they want to know more. Give them a chance, baby. Give yourself a chance. This could be a good thing. I do not want to go back to that music class. I do not want to see her again. I understand. But running away does not solve anything. Tomorrow we are going to meet with the principal and with Mrs. Henshaw. She is going to apologize to you." "The principal called you?" "Yes. He explained everything. He said Mrs. Henshaw is being disciplined for how she treated you. He wants to make sure you feel safe and welcome at the school." Marcus leaned against his mother. She was warm and solid and safe. She always knew what to do, what to say. "Why do people judge you before they know you?" he asked. Why did she think I could not play just because of what I look like? Dorothy sighed. It was a question she had been asked before, in different ways at different times. It was a question she had asked herself many times in her own life. "Some people carry old ideas in their heads," she said. "Ideas about who can do what, who belongs where. Those ideas are wrong, but they are hard to get rid of. Sometimes the only way to change someone's mind is to show them they are wrong. That is what you did today. But I should not have to prove myself all the time. I should not have to be twice as good just to be treated fairly. You are right. You should not have to. But sometimes, baby, that is how the world works. At least for now. The important thing is that you know who you are. You know what you can do. Nobody can take that away from you." Marcus thought about this. His mother was right as usual. Mrs. Henshaw had tried to make him feel small and ashamed. But instead, he had shown everyone what he was capable of. He had played the piano the way his father had taught him, with skill and heart and soul. And people had responded, they had clapped, they had stood up for him. Maybe that meant something. Maybe that meant things could be different at this school. The next afternoon, Marcus and his mother walked into Principal Rodriguez's office. Marcus wore his best clothes, a button-up shirt and clean jeans. His mother wore her nurse's scrubs because she had come straight from work. She had left the hospital early to make this meeting, which meant she would lose money from her paycheck. But she had told Marcus that this was important. More important than money. Mrs. Henshaw was already in the office when they arrived. She sat in one of the chairs facing the principal's desk. She looked different than she had in the classroom. Smaller somehow, less powerful. Her face was drawn and tired with dark circles under her eyes. She did not look at Marcus or his mother when they entered. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor. "Please have a seat," Mr. Rodriguez said, gesturing to 2 empty chairs. Dorothy and Marcus sat down. The office felt crowded with 4 people in it. Marcus could hear the clock on the wall ticking. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Rodriguez began. "We are here today to address what happened in Mrs. Henshaw's music class yesterday. Mrs. Henshaw has something she would like to say to Marcus and his mother." Everyone looked at Mrs. Henshaw. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. Marcus had never imagined that Mrs. Henshaw could cry. "I owe you an apology," Mrs. Henshaw said. Her voice was shaky. "Marcus, I treated you very poorly yesterday. I made assumptions about you based on your appearance and where you came from. I tried to embarrass you in front of your classmates. What I did was cruel and wrong, and I am deeply sorry." She paused and took a breath. It seemed hard for her to speak. "I have been teaching for a long time," she continued. "I thought I was a good teacher. I thought I treated all my students fairly. But yesterday showed me that I have been carrying prejudices that I did not even realize I had. Or maybe I did realize it and I just did not want to admit it. Either way, there is no excuse for how I behaved." Mrs. Henshaw looked directly at Marcus now. Her eyes were shiny with tears. "You are an extraordinary musician, Marcus. The talent you showed yesterday is rare and precious. You should have been celebrated and encouraged, not challenged and doubted. I took something that should have been a positive experience and turned it into something painful. I am truly, truly sorry for that." She turned to Dorothy. "Mrs. Thompson, your son is a credit to you and to his father. The fact that he could play so beautifully under such stressful circumstances shows not just talent but character. I hope you can both forgive me, though I know I do not deserve it." The room was quiet. Marcus looked at his mother. She had her hands folded in her lap, her face thoughtful and serious. She looked back at her son, then at Mrs. Henshaw. "Mrs. Henshaw," Dorothy said, "I appreciate your apology. I can see that you mean it. But I need you to understand something. My son should never have been put in that position in the first place. No child should. When you look at a student, any student, you should see potential, not limitations. You should see who they might become, not what you assume they cannot be." "You are absolutely right," Mrs. Henshaw said. "Marcus has faced prejudice before," Dorothy continued. "This is not the first time someone has underestimated him because of his skin color. It will not be the last time. But he is a child, and school should be a safe place for him. Teachers should be people who lift students up, not tear them down." "I agree completely," Mrs. Henshaw said, "and I promise to do better. I am enrolling in training programs to help me examine my own biases. I am committed to changing, to being the kind of teacher that all students deserve." Dorothy nodded. "Good, because second chances mean nothing if people do not actually change." Mr. Rodriguez spoke up. "I want to assure you, Mrs. Thompson, that we are taking this very seriously. Mrs. Henshaw will be monitored closely. If there are any more incidents of this nature, there will be serious consequences. We want Marcus to feel safe and welcomed at Lincoln Middle School." "Thank you," Dorothy said. Everyone looked at Marcus. He had been quiet through the whole conversation. He was only 12 years old, sitting in a room with 3 adults who were all talking about him, apologizing to him, making promises about his future. It was overwhelming. "Marcus," Mr. Rodriguez said gently, "is there anything you would like to say?" Marcus looked at Mrs. Henshaw. She looked back at him with sad, hopeful eyes. She was waiting for him to say something, to accept her apology or reject it, to forgive her or tell her he hated her. Marcus thought about his father. What would his father say in this situation? His father always said that music was about communication, about understanding each other. His father always said that everyone makes mistakes, but good people learn from them. "I accept your apology," Marcus said quietly, "but I need you to know that what you did hurt. Not just because you tried to embarrass me, but because you made me feel like I did not belong, like I was not good enough to even touch the piano. That feeling is hard to forget." "I understand," Mrs. Henshaw said, her voice thick with emotion. "I will come back to music class," Marcus continued, "because I love music, but I need to know that you will treat me the same as everyone else. Not better because you feel guilty. Not worse because of what happened. Just the same." "I will," Mrs. Henshaw promised. "I give you my word," Mr. Rodriguez smiled. "I think this is a good start. Mrs. Henshaw, you are dismissed. Please remember our conversation about the training program. I will be sending you more information by email." Mrs. Henshaw stood up. She looked at Marcus one more time. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me another chance." After she left, Mr. Rodriguez turned to Marcus with a smile. "There is one more thing I wanted to discuss with you, Marcus. Something more positive. Our school is having a winter concert in December. It is a big event where students perform for their families and the community. I would like to invite you to be one of our featured performers. Would you be interested in playing a piece on the piano?" Marcus's eyes widened. Really? Really? After what I have heard about your performance yesterday, I think the whole school would love to hear you play in a proper concert setting. You could choose whatever piece you want to perform. We would give you plenty of time to prepare. Marcus looked at his mother. She was smiling. That sounds wonderful, Dorothy said. If Marcus wants to do it, can I think about it? Marcus asked. Of course, Mr. Rodriguez said. Take your time. Let me know by the end of the week. Over the next few days, things at school began to change. Marcus still got attention from other students, but it felt different now. Instead of treating him like a celebrity or a curiosity, they treated him like a person. Kids said hello to him in the hallways. They asked him to sit with them at lunch. They included him in conversations. Tyler and Brad, the two boys from the cafeteria, became his friends. They were on the basketball team and invited Marcus to come watch their practices. Jessica introduced him to her friend group, a mix of kids who were into art and music and theater. Slowly, Marcus started to feel like he belonged. Music class was awkward at first. On his first day back, Marcus walked in and every student watched to see what would happen. Mrs. Henshaw greeted him politely, just like she greeted all the other students. She did not single him out. She did not mention what had happened. She just taught the lesson. But Marcus noticed changes in how she taught. She started including different types of music in her lessons, not just European classical. She played recordings of Duke Ellington and Scott Joplin and discussed how jazz and blues were important American musical traditions. She talked about musicians from different countries and cultures. She asked students about what kind of music they listened to at home, and she did not make judgmental comments when someone said they liked hip-hop or country or rock. She was trying. Marcus could see that she was really trying. One afternoon, after class was over, Mrs. Henshaw asked Marcus to stay for a moment. He felt nervous, wondering if something was wrong. But she just wanted to talk about the winter concert. Have you decided if you want to perform? She asked. I think so, Marcus said. Yes, I would like to. I am so glad. Do you know what you want to play? Marcus had been thinking about this. He had talked to his father on the phone about it. His father had suggested several pieces, but then Marcus had an idea of his own. I want to play something I wrote, he said. Mrs. Henshaw looked surprised. You compose music? A little bit. I have been working on a piece for a few weeks. It is not finished yet, but I think I can finish it by December. That is wonderful, Marcus. What is it about? Does it have a title? Marcus hesitated. He had a title, but he was not sure if he should say it. It might be too honest, too direct. But his father had taught him that music should be honest, that it should say what you really feel. I am calling it For Those Who Judge Without Knowing, he said. Mrs. Henshaw's face changed. She understood immediately what the piece was about. It was about her, about what she had done, about prejudice and assumption and seeing beyond the surface. That is a powerful title, she said quietly. I would be honored to hear it. It is not angry, Marcus explained. It is not trying to make anyone feel bad. It is just about understanding, about how we should try to know people before we decide who they are. That sounds beautiful, and very wise for someone your age. My dad helped me with some of the ideas, but the music is all mine. I am sure it will be extraordinary. And Marcus, if you need any help preparing for the concert, if you want to practice in this room or if you need someone to listen and give you feedback, I am here. Only if you want, of course. Marcus thought about it. A week ago, he would have said no immediately. He would not have wanted anything from Mrs. Henshaw, but she was trying to change. She was trying to be better, and maybe giving her a chance to help him was part of forgiveness. Okay, he said. Thank you. Over the next few weeks, Marcus worked on his composition every day. At home, he sat at the old upright piano in the living room and wrote down notes, tried different melodies, experimented with harmonies. His mother would sit on the couch and listen, offering encouragement even when she was exhausted from work. His father called every few days to hear updates. Remember, his father told him, the best music comes from the heart. Do not try to write what you think people want to hear. Write what you need to say. Twice a week, Marcus stayed after school to practice in the music room. Mrs. Henshaw would sit at her desk and grade papers while he played. She never interrupted. She never criticized. She just listened. One day after Marcus finished practicing, Mrs. Henshaw spoke up. You have such a gift, she said. Not just technical skill, but emotional depth. When you play, you make people feel things. That is the mark of a true artist. Thank you, Marcus said. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus nodded. Do you ever get angry? About how people treat you, I mean. About the prejudice you face? Marcus considered the question. Sometimes, he admitted. But my dad says that anger can be useful if you use it the right way. If you let it make you work harder, be better, prove people wrong. But if you just stay angry all the time, it hurts you more than anyone else. Your father sounds like a wise man. He is. I wish I could see him more. He must be very proud of you. He is. He says I am already better than he was at my age. I do not know if that is true, but it feels good to hear. Mrs. Henshaw smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. It was the first time Marcus had seen her smile like that. For what it is worth, Marcus, I am proud of you too. Not just for your music, but for your character. You had every right to refuse to accept my apology, to stay angry with me, to make my life difficult. But you chose grace instead. That says a lot about who you are. Marcus felt his face get warm. I just tried to do what I thought was right. Well, you succeeded. As Marcus left the music room that day, he felt something shift inside him. He was not completely ready to call Mrs. Henshaw a friend. That would take more time, maybe a lot more time. But he no longer saw her as an enemy. He saw her as someone who had made a mistake, who was working hard to fix it, who was trying to be better. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe that was how change really happened, one small step at a time. The night of the winter concert arrived on a cold December evening. Snow had fallen that afternoon, covering the school grounds in a blanket of white. Inside the auditorium, families and students filled the seats. The room buzzed with excitement and conversation. Children ran up and down the aisles while parents talked and looked at their programs. Backstage, Marcus stood in the wings and looked out at the crowd through a gap in the curtain. There had to be at least 300 people out there, maybe more. His stomach churned with nervousness. He had played in front of his music class, yes, but this was different. This was a real performance. People had paid money to be here. They had expectations. He wore a black suit that his mother had bought for him at a thrift store. She had altered it herself to make it fit perfectly. He looked older in it, more mature than his 12 years. But inside he felt like a scared little kid. Nervous? Marcus turned to see Tyler standing behind him. Tyler was performing a trumpet solo earlier in the program. He was already dressed in his concert clothes, his trumpet case in his hand. Yeah, Marcus admitted, really nervous. You will do great, man. I heard you practicing last week. You are incredible. What if I mess up? What if I forget the notes? Then you make something up. That is what jazz musicians do, right? Besides, nobody out there knows what the piece is supposed to sound like. It is your original composition. You could play anything, and they would think it was part of the song. Marcus laughed a little. Tyler had a way of making things seem less scary. Thanks, Marcus said. No problem. That is what friends are for. Friends? Marcus smiled at the word. A few months ago, he had not had any friends at this school. Now he had several, and they felt real. Not just kids who wanted to be associated with the piano prodigy, but actual friends who liked him for who he was. Mrs. Henshaw appeared from the other side of the stage. She wore a long blue dress and had her hair down instead of in its usual bun. She looked different, softer somehow. 5 minutes until we start, she announced to the students gathered backstage. Everyone take your places. Marcus, you are performing last, so you can sit in the front row until it is your turn. Okay, Marcus said. Mrs. Henshaw paused and looked at him. Are you ready? I think so. You are going to be wonderful. Trust yourself. Marcus nodded and made his way to his seat in the front row. As he walked through the backstage area, he saw his mother coming toward him. She was wearing her best dress, the navy blue one she wore to church. Behind her was someone else, someone Marcus had not expected to see. Dad? Leonard Thompson stood there with a huge grin on his face. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and kind eyes that looked just like Marcus's eyes. He wore a dark suit and a bright tie. He looked tired from traveling, but happy. Surprise, his father said, opening his arms. Marcus ran to him and hugged him tight. His father smelled like airports and coffee, but also like home. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. What are you doing here? You are supposed to be in Chicago. I canceled my gig, his father said. There was no way I was going to miss this, my son's first major concert, playing his own composition. I would not miss this for anything in the world. But you never cancel gigs. I do when something more important comes up, and you, my son, are the most important thing in my life. Marcus hugged his father again. His mother stood next to them, smiling and crying at the same time. Go sit with your mother, Leonard said. I will be in the front row watching every note. And Marcus, remember what I always tell you. Play from the heart, Marcus said. That is right. The technique is important, but the heart is what makes music real. You have got both, so just let it flow. The house lights dimmed and brightened twice, signaling that the concert was about to begin. Marcus's parents went to find their seats while Marcus took his place in the front row with the other performers. The concert began with the school choir singing holiday songs. They sounded good, their voices blending together in harmony. Then came a series of solo performances. A girl played the flute. A boy played the saxophone. Tyler performed his trumpet solo and did not make a single mistake. The audience clapped enthusiastically after each performance. Mrs. Henshaw stood at the side of the stage introducing each performer and each piece. When she spoke, her voice was warm and encouraging. She said something nice about every student, highlighting their hard work and dedication. Finally, after more than an hour of performances, it was Marcus's turn. Mrs. Henshaw walked to the center of the stage and held up her hand for silence. The audience quieted down. Our final performer tonight is someone very special, she began. Marcus Thompson joined our school this year, and he has already made a tremendous impact on our music program. Marcus is not just a talented pianist, he is a composer as well. Tonight he will be performing an original piece that he wrote himself. The title of this piece is For Those Who Judge Without Knowing. Mrs. Henshaw paused. Marcus could see her take a deep breath. Before Marcus plays, I would like to say something personal. When Marcus first came to my class, I made assumptions about him that were unfair and wrong. I judged him based on where he came from instead of who he was. Marcus responded to my prejudice with grace and with art. He showed me that talent and character have nothing to do with the color of someone's skin or their background. He taught me to be a better teacher and a better person. The audience was completely silent now. This was not the kind of thing people usually said at school concerts. Marcus could have held my mistakes against me, but instead he chose to forgive and to create something beautiful out of a painful experience. This composition you are about to hear is not angry or bitter. It is about understanding, about seeing, beyond the surface, about recognizing the humanity in all people. I am honored that Marcus chose to share this piece tonight, and I am grateful for the lesson he has taught me. Mrs. Henshaw looked at Marcus and smiled. He smiled back. Then she gestured toward the stage. Please welcome Marcus Thompson. The audience applauded as Marcus stood up and walked onto the stage. The lights were bright in his eyes. He could barely see the faces in the crowd, which was probably a good thing. If he could see all those people staring at him, he might freeze up completely. He walked to the piano, a beautiful Steinway grand, and sat down on the bench. He adjusted it slightly so his feet could reach the pedals comfortably. He took a deep breath and placed his hands over the keys. In the front row, he could just barely make out his mother and father sitting together. His mother had her hands clasped under her chin. His father sat very still, watching intently. Marcus closed his eyes and let the nervousness flow out of him. He thought about the music, about what he wanted to say with these notes. He thought about his journey to this moment, about Mrs. Henshaw's hurtful words, about his own anger and fear, about the choice to forgive, about the hope that people could change. Then he began to play. The piece started slowly, with single notes in the bass that sounded almost like a heartbeat, steady, strong, persistent. Then the right hand joined in with a melody that was simple but haunting. It spoke of loneliness, of being seen but not understood, of being judged by what people saw on the outside. As the piece developed, the melody became more complex. The harmonies grew richer, the rhythm shifted and changed. Marcus used elements from both classical and jazz music, blending them together in a way that felt natural and unforced. This was his voice, his story, told through sound. In the middle section, the music became darker and more intense. The left hand played deep, rumbling chords while the right hand played rapid, urgent patterns. This was the anger, the hurt, the frustration of being treated unfairly. But Marcus did not let the anger take over. He controlled it, shaped it, transformed it. Then came the resolution. The music softened. The melody returned, but this time it was different. It had hope in it. It had peace. The left and right hands began to have a conversation, playing off each other, responding to each other, understanding each other. This was the forgiveness, the growth, the possibility of change. Marcus poured everything he had into the performance. His fingers flew across the keys with precision and passion. His whole body moved with the music, swaying and bending, completely immersed in the sound he was creating. In the audience, people were mesmerized. Some had tears running down their faces. Others sat with their mouths open in wonder. Marcus's mother was crying openly, pride and love shining in her eyes. His father watched with the focused intensity of a fellow musician, recognizing the skill and heart in every measure. Mrs. Henshaw stood at the side of the stage with tears streaming down her face. This music was about her mistake and her shame, but it was also about redemption. It was about the possibility that people could learn and grow and become better versions of themselves. Marcus had taken her worst moment and turned it into art, into something beautiful that could touch people's hearts. The piece built to a climax, with both hands playing powerful chords that filled the auditorium with sound. Then gradually it became quieter and quieter. The melody slowed down. The notes spread further apart. Finally, Marcus played one last soft chord and let it ring out into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched out, heavy with emotion. Then the applause began. It started with Marcus's father, who stood up and began clapping loudly. Then Marcus's mother stood up. Then people in the rows around them. Within seconds, the entire auditorium was on its feet. Everyone was standing and clapping and cheering. Marcus opened his eyes and looked out at the crowd. He could see them now, all these people standing for him, appreciating what he had created. He felt overwhelmed by emotion. Happy, grateful, proud, relieved all at once. He stood up and took a bow. The applause continued. Some people were whistling and shouting, "Bravo!" Tyler and his other friends were cheering from the side of the stage. Mrs. Henshaw was clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Marcus bowed again, then walked off the stage. As soon as he was in the wings, his father was there, scooping him up in a bear hug. "That was incredible," his father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are incredible. I am so proud of you I could burst." His mother joined the hug, wrapping her arms around both of them. "My baby," she said. "My talented, amazing baby." Mrs. Henshaw approached them, hesitating at first. She did not want to intrude on this family moment. But Marcus saw her and pulled away from his parents. "Mrs. Henshaw," he said. "Marcus, I do not have words," she said. "That was one of the most beautiful things I have ever heard. Thank you. Thank you for creating something so meaningful out of such a difficult situation." "I learned from my dad," Marcus said. "He always says the best art comes from real life, from real feelings." Leonard extended his hand to Mrs. Henshaw. "I am Leonard Thompson, Marcus's father." Mrs. Henshaw shook his hand. "You must be so proud. Your son is extraordinary, I am. But I think you should know, Mrs. Henshaw, that Marcus told me everything that happened. He told me about the first day in your class, about your apology, about how you have been working to do better." Mrs. Henshaw looked down, embarrassed. "I want to thank you." Leonard continued. "Not for what you did at first, but for how you responded when you realized your mistake. A lot of people would have gotten defensive or made excuses. You took responsibility. You changed. That takes courage." "It was the least I could do," Mrs. Henshaw said. "It was everything," Leonard replied. "Because of how you handled it, my son learned something valuable. He learned that people can make mistakes and still be worthy of forgiveness. He learned that change is possible. Those are lessons that will serve him his whole life." Mrs. Henshaw's eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you for saying that. And thank you, Marcus, for being willing to work with me. Even after I hurt you, you have changed my life." After the concert, people came up to Marcus to congratulate him. Parents asked if he gave piano lessons. Teachers told him they were proud to have him at the school. Students asked him to sign their programs. But the moment Marcus would remember most came later, as the auditorium was emptying out. An elderly black woman approached him with tears in her eyes. She took both his hands in hers. "Thank you, young man," she said. "I am 73 years old. I have lived through a lot of prejudice and pain in my life. But tonight you gave me hope. You showed that the next generation is braver and wiser than we were. You took hate and turned it into beauty. That is the most powerful thing a person can do." Marcus did not know what to say. He just squeezed her hands and nodded. 2 years later, Marcus was in 9th grade and preparing to audition for a prestigious music conservatory. He had continued to compose music and had performed in several concerts around the city. His reputation as a young pianist and composer had grown. A local newspaper had even written an article about him. Mrs. Henshaw was still teaching at Lincoln Middle School. She had become an advocate for diversity in music education, helping to establish a scholarship fund for underprivileged students who wanted to pursue music. She had also started including a much wider range of musical traditions in her curriculum. On a warm spring day, Mrs. Henshaw sat in her classroom during her free period. She was alone grading papers when there was a knock on the door. "Come in," she said. Marcus walked in, now taller and older, but still with the same kind eyes. "Marcus, what a wonderful surprise. What are you doing here?" "I had the day off from high school, so I thought I would visit. I wanted to ask you something." "Of course, anything." "I am giving a master class next month at the community center for middle school students who want to improve their piano skills. I was wondering if you would help me organize it. Maybe some of your students would want to attend." Mrs. Henshaw smiled. "I would be honored. And I know several students who would love to learn from you." "Great, there is one more thing." Marcus pulled an envelope from his backpack. "This is an invitation to my conservatory audition recital. It is next month. I would really like you to be there." Mrs. Henshaw took the envelope with trembling hands. "Marcus, I would not miss it for the world." "Good, because you are one of the reasons I kept going with music. Even after everything that happened, you showed me that people can grow and change. That inspired me as much as the music did." After Marcus left, Mrs. Henshaw sat at her desk and cried. But these were not tears of shame or regret. They were tears of gratitude. One mistake could have defined her forever. But Marcus Thompson had given her a chance to be better, and she had taken it. That, she realized, was its own kind of grace.